Welcome to the Daily Insider here on Vegas Insider. I am Kevin Rogers for Wednesday, January 12th, 2022. We got a nice loaded show today. We'll talk plenty of NFL playoffs. Holden Kushner will join us from the VSIN Denver CityCast. Also, Stephanie Otey is going to join us as well, and we'll talk plenty of NFL playoffs and a lot going on today. So we will get to that coming up in just a moment. But before we do, BetMGM, they're the king of sports books. New players only. Bet $10 to win $200. If your team scores a touchdown, bet on any NFL money line. And if your team scores a touchdown, you'll receive an additional $200 in free bets. Must be 21 years or older to play. Legal in the following states: Arizona, New Jersey, Indiana, Colorado, Tennessee, West Virginia, Iowa, Virginia, Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Washington, D.C. only. Full terms and conditions apply. That is BetMGM. They are the king of sports books. All right, let's get the party started. Stephanie Otey, Holden Kushner joining us today on the show. Welcome, everyone. And let's get right to it. NFL playoffs. They begin this weekend. 2 games Saturday, 3 games Sunday, 1 game Monday. We'll look at all of them. But Holden, I guess your thoughts. I want to get to this before we get to the playoffs. What were your thoughts on how everything ended Sunday night with the Raiders-Chargers, with that whole scenario? The tie, they both go. Raiders wanted to kick the field goal. Chargers came back late. What did you take from all of that on Sunday?
Well, let me first preface this by saying it's wonderful to be in your presence. It's wonderful to be in Stephanie's presence as well. It really is an honor and a privilege, and I look forward to talking to you again later today on the Denver CityCast presented by BetRivers. So anyways, I'm going to be honest with you. I'm old now, and I fell asleep with about, 13 minutes to go in the fourth quarter. So I had to wake up, and I watched what happened with this game, and I absolutely couldn't believe it. I was actually hoping it was going to end in a tie because it would have been great. The books would have just gotten destroyed, and that would have made me laugh a lot. But honestly, it was the most bizarre game, the most bizarre finish I have ever seen to a game, and I have seen a lot of games. Ultimately, should the Chargers – I don't know what the Chargers could have done at that point. The Raiders kicked it, and they got into the playoffs. But just a simple way of saying it, K-Raj, extraordinarily bizarre way to end the regular season.
Hang on 1 sec, Steph. Steph, you're on mute.
There you go. Can you hear me?
Yep, go.
Hey, well, we got a weird year this year with one team in each conference getting that extra week off, Packers, and it's going to be Tennessee. I'm interested for you to tell me which team you think gets more of an edge here, with Tennessee being a little bit of a new addition to that. Now he's on mute.
I'm not on mute. This is just where we are.
What's going on in Denver?
Yeah, well, there's a lot of things that are legal in here, Stephanie, and
I was just going to get to that. I'm like, did you do some extracurricular activities?
No. We stay away from that. So you want to know about the Titans? Is that what you're asking?
Yes, having that extra week off.
Yeah, I love what's going on with the Titans right now. I think people are sleeping on them. I think they're a great bet to win the Super Bowl, depending on where you're shopping. You can get some nice odds there. They're going to have home field here. Mike Vrabel, one of the better head coaches in the National Football League, and a team that's really built around defense. But here's the deal. Now you're getting Derrick Henry back, and he is such a physical freak. We know he's a physical freak. I would not be surprised after taking half the season off because of injury, maybe more than that, he comes back with fresh legs and just completely dominates. So you're going to see a lot of teams, as we've seen in the regular season, airing it out. The Chiefs are going to try and air it out. A lot of these teams are going to try and air it out. And I think the advantage that the Titans have, as opposed to being built for the regular season, they're kind of built for the postseason, because you can run, you can play defense. And while you're not going to get away with that in 17 games in a regular season, there's a finite amount of teams to have to beat. There's a finite amount of games that you have to win. What is that, 3? To win the Super Bowl? I love the Titans, and actually they're my favorite futures bet here in the playoffs.
Now, looking at Saturday's action, Holden, and the Bengals play the Raiders in the opening game, and that's one where at first I felt like I was kind of biting on the Raiders because of how they played down the stretch. They won 4 straight, all by close margins. But then I look back at it, and I had the number written down, which I should have taken here with me, but I didn't. I think it's 6 wins they had on game-winning field goals this year, that they won all these games late. Cincinnati, now, Burrow didn't play last week. You wonder what his health, I know he didn't have to play in that game against Cleveland, but you hope that he's closer 100%. But I just have a bad feeling now about the Raiders. I feel like I've shifted a bit, seeing they've won so many close games. They've lived on the edge for like a month. I got to believe the Bengals here can grab this one. They took care of the Raiders earlier this year in Vegas. What do you think about it?
This is a interesting game to handicap, and to this point, it's one of the 4 games that I have not ended up betting on to this point. I know we got more games than that this weekend, but a couple things going on here, and this is more from a betting system than a trends thing that's going on. If you look at teams that did not make the playoffs the year before, then come into the playoffs, these are teams that normally lose. The problem is both of these teams have not been in the playoffs, so I'm kind of throwing out my favorite system here coming into this game. I do not like the side. I would also caution people. I keep hearing this. Oh, it's going to be so cold in Cincinnati. How is listen, don't worry about the cold weather. When you've got weather 20 degrees or lower, and it's a pretty big sample size over the last 7, 8, 9 years now. When you've got that, actually, the lower the temperature goes, you're going to get some higher totals at 43. So first of all, don't worry about the total here. And the money's coming in on the over because it went from 48.5 to 49.5. So as far as a side goes, K-Raj, I really don't have a good feel on this. This is Zach Taylor and Joe Burrow's first dance in the playoffs. Now, you do have the other thing with David Carr where he's 0-5, 30 degrees below. That's a very small sample. But what I'm looking at here, I would not be surprised to see some points get put up in this ball game. And that's probably the way I would lean toward the over.
And Holden, so, rookie quarterbacks historically don't have much success in the playoffs. And you look at the Patriots, they have, the best coach in the league. But do you think that Mac Jones will be in good shape when he faces off with the Bills? He only threw passes in that first facing with them. But, I looked at a poll, NBC Sports posted it. 77% of fans don't want Mac Jones to be benched. Are you with them on that?
They want him to be benched?
They don't. There was some talk about, okay, should you bench Mac Jones for the playoff game? But the fans are saying, no, keep him in.
Well, for once, the fans are actually right. I didn't even know this was an option. Like, he got you to this point. You better be running his butt out there. Mac Jones better play in this game, or my bet on the Patriots plus 4.5 on the road is not looking very good. Now you're starting to scare me here. I mean, come on, Mac Jones not play. This is freaking me out. Listen, here's the deal. Down the stretch, the Patriots were not playing good football. Okay, they lost 3 of 4, and as K-Raj knows, they fell to the Dolphins of all teams. Right? They lost 33-24. That was a nasty one. The Bills, on the other hand, 4 straight wins. Everything's going their way. Right? Well, I think there's a couple ways to attack this. First of all, I think that the Buffalo defense is just spectacular. Second overall in DVOA. New England was 4th. So immediately I look toward the total. You look toward the total of a low total, there's kind of a correlation between point spread and low total. Also, divisional game. These two teams have seen each other 2 times already. I get one was in like a tornado. Kind of throw that one out of the mix here. But the Bill Belichick, despite being on the road, despite a rookie quarterback, familiarity between the two teams. I'm also looking at a single game parlay here as well. But I think Belichick and these guys can at least come up with a game plan to try and neutralize Josh Allen as he tries to throw the football. But my single game parlay I'm looking at right now would be Patriots plus 4.5. That would be the first thing. The second thing would be under on the total. And then the third thing is I want to know where Josh Allen, his rushing prop is. And if I can get all 3 of these bets, if I can get a Josh Allen rushing prop below 40 yards, and I don't know if they're going to do that, but if it's below 40 yards, I'm hitting it. Because one thing you noticed as these playoffs go on over the years, these mobile quarterbacks, they don't give a damn about their body anymore. It's not Kyler Murray just sliding down, trying to avoid a hit. This is where it all matters. And I think some of these mobile, physical quarterbacks like Josh Allen, that is a way to attack this game too. If you don't like the side of the total, I'll be interested to see where his rushing prop is set.
Well, also, too, with the Mac Jones discussion, that first game, he was asked to throw 3 passes because it was so windy. They ran the ball a million times. Second matchup in New England, he didn't play as well. So now you're going to play in Buffalo. It's going to be like 9 degrees. But let's see what you do here. Asking you to win a game is going to be probably asking you a lot out of Mac Jones. But on the flip side now, let's transition to Sunday. Now, Belichick in the playoffs without Brady. Brady at home for the first time in the playoffs with the Bucs. I'm not counting the Super Bowl. Like the first 3 rounds all on the road last year for Tampa Bay, won them all. You get Philadelphia, upstart Eagles. They run the ball, run the ball, run the ball. How much do you think, Holden, are they going to ask out of Jalen Hurts in this game?
Well, don't they have to ask a lot out of Jalen Hurts in this game? This is a defense for the Bucs that was built to stop the run. And I get it. It took Sirianni about 2 months to figure out that the best way for his offense to succeed was not having Jalen Hurts throwing the ball 30 times. Now you want your running backs running the ball 30 times. And here it is again. I think we get into the playoffs. We see a quarterback that's very, very mobile. I feel like he's going to try and run as much as possible. Here's the problem I see for the Eagles, and it's on the other side of the ball. Leonard Fournette is going to be back. Now, there is a stark contrast in the success of Tom Brady in the passing game with and without Antonio Brown. He is so much better with Antonio Brown than without him. With that being said, Gronk is playing as great a football as he has in his career. He still has Mike Evans, and I think the Bucs go back to doing what they did last year. Rely on the defense. I don't want to say Brady's going to be a game manager, but he's probably going to be in a position playing from in front, because I do think that there's a problem with the Eagles. Their strength is also the Bucs' strength on the defensive side of the ball, K-Raj. So I don't like the Eagles here. I have not hit the side yet for the Bucs.
Holden, later on Sunday, this game I find the hardest is the 49ers and the Cowboys. I just don't like the inconsistency, but I think the key matchup will be the 49ers run game against the Cowboys defense. Do you think that the Cowboys peaked too early? Do you think that they can push through in a playoff this year?
I love the Niners here. This line came out at 3.5, and I was like, oh, should I hit it? I really haven't researched it yet. And it sat at 3 for most of the week. My guys at Bet Rivers put it back up at 3.5 this morning, and I hit it. I hit the Niners plus 3.5 on the road. And here's another thing. Since week 9, Dallas has given up 130 yards per game on the ground. What is Shanahan going to do in this game with his red hot team as well? I think Elijah Mitchell just goes absolutely bananas. They've got wonderful skilled players. We've seen what Jimmy Garoppolo can do. As much as we want to knock Jimmy Garoppolo, as much as a lot of the fan base in San Francisco wants Trey Lance to be in there, all this guy has gone out and done is be very efficient and made the plays when it's mattered. I'm not saying that Dallas doesn't have a shot in this game. As a matter of fact, Dallas could win this thing outright. But if you're going to give me the Niners 3 and a hook on the road against the Cowboys team that I'm still not sold on, it's got to be the Niners plus 3.5 on the road. Let me ask you a question real quick though. Sorry, K-Raj. What's holding you back from this game? Why is this game a tough handicap for you?
I never can vote on the Cowboys or bet on the Cowboys. I think that you never know what to expect from them, because it's just either they'll like the offense like has a fluke or whatever. It's always been that way, even when Romo was quarterback. I just think that Cowboys is that team for me. I grew up loving the Cowboys, but I don't ever want to bet on them. And I think the 49ers are getting hot at the right time.
I think, too, with San Francisco, that you look back at it, this team was almost forgotten last year. They were going to win the Super Bowl 2 years ago. Not that they were in the Super Bowl. They were going to win it. They stopped that Patrick Mahomes long pass to Tyreek Hill downfield, they win that Super Bowl. They had all those injuries last year. And even with Garoppolo, Holden, that he was never a dog 2 years ago in the playoffs. At least they played at home, remember, against the Vikings, against the Packers, and they blew out both those teams. Now you're getting him as a dog. They've been such a surprise. They had that slow start. I lean San Francisco, but I see the weapons on Dallas. The Cowboy narrative is just so tough at times, but I could see the point with the Niners. My only issue with the Niners is, did they waste it all last week against the Rams?
I don't know. I think Holden convinced me. I think now I think I am leaning towards San Francisco.
I didn't know I was that persuasive. I mean, geez, go ask my girlfriend. I can't get anything done over there. It's like I try to be persuasive and she keeps telling me no. Yeah, you're an idiot and you don't know what you're talking about. That's all right. We only met like 15 minutes ago, so I kind of understand why you would lean on a pick that I would make. But no, K-Raj, again, I kind of alluded to that with Garoppolo. He's had playoff success. He's been there. He's made a deep run. I think that they're really going to test the Cowboys in this game on the ground. It's just Shanahan. I've seen this up close. I was in Washington for a long time when he was the offensive coordinator there. He turned Alfred Morris into a stud, a super stud. It's fascinating what he can do in this ground game. And don't forget, Deebo Samuel is going to be involved. And now George Kittle's healthy. I don't think there's any surprise, the correlation between success of this team and the return of a healthy George Kittle. There's two dogs that I like, and it's really the two sides I like. And I didn't realize this. I went back early this morning and I tracked my picks in the playoffs. Over my last 10 picks, I have taken dogs in the playoffs. Then you look at some of the trades too. So, I mean, everything lines up here for the Niners, +3 and a hook. I wouldn't do it at the field goal. There's a decent shot that this pushes, but that hook came up and it was just too juicy to pass up.
Do you have any faith Sunday night in the Steelers on the road?
No. Do you want to actually talk about this game? Because it might be over in the first quarter.
The memes that came out of that game were hysterical.
Yeah. I don't know. Listen, K-Raj, the Steelers by far and away are the worst team in the playoffs, right? I mean, come on, let's face it. This is a team that backed into the playoffs. Ben Roethlisberger. I think it's a compliment to call him Noodle Arm Ben at this point, because I don't even think he has a noodle arm anymore. What is the way that the Steelers are going to win? I'm trying to figure this out. All right, so they blitz and they put pressure on Mahomes. Can they get to Mahomes? Offensive line rebuilt, looks pretty good. Okay, is Mahomes going to make mistakes? He was awful the first 7 weeks of the season. He's back to being Patrick Mahomes. He's patient now. You can try and drop two safeties back. He, Bieniemy, and Andy Reid got together and they said, okay, instead of going deep for the big play, let's just dink and dunk and we'll choose our spots to go deep. The emergence of Byron Pringle. I think the run game, listen, they've got to get Darrell Williams going. Not so sure about CEH in this game, but just the talent disparity, Arrowhead Stadium, impossible. Just such a tough place to play. I don't want to back, double-digit points here, but I just don't see how the Steelers even hang in this game.
Yeah. And the last one is with the Cardinals. They went downhill so fast. Do you think they can gain some momentum against the Rams? I mean, their first half of the season looked completely different than now.
There's a lot of pressure on Matt Stafford in this game. A lot of pressure. Now, Jalen Ramsey came out this morning on Twitter. He came out and he put a little devil head up there and he was like, hey, we got something. Well, Weddles hasn't played all year and he's coming to play for them now. So now you get a fresh body there in the secondary. Listen, I think this is all about Matt Stafford. How does he perform? To me, I love this offense when it's at home. How are the Cardinals going to stop Cooper Kupp? He's almost impossible to stop. They get a massive boost in their backfield. Okay. Cam Akers is now coming back. Sony Michel surprisingly has been terrific. So you've got a dynamic offense with the Rams. But on the other side, we'll go back to mobile quarterbacks. I think Kyler Murray can keep his team in this game offensively by running the ball and run the ball a ton. James Conner has been a revelation. He's not very efficient, but when you look back at the box score, he's getting in the end zone all the time. Does Chase Edmonds come back? Because that makes that offense a little bit more dynamic. And I like what I've seen out of Antoine Wesley, who has taken the rookie who has taken over DeAndre Hopkins' role as that big play guy, and Murray's looking for him in the end zone. On the other side of things, this Rams defense, man, I just think they're primed for a nice little run here. I do have the Rams on a futures bet to win the Super Bowl earlier in the year. I doubled down on that once they went through their little funk. I think that as far as teams that everybody is sleeping on, the Rams are the one that are probably, I think they're the most talented team out there when you combine offense and defense. And nobody is really talking about them to run through the NFC. I like them in this game. Do I like them with the spread? No, not right now. Do I like them to make a run? Yeah, for me, the play on the Rams is to run through the playoffs.
Now, the one thing about Arizona, though, Holden, is they were so bad at home to close the season that I like them in the spot on the road. That because they've been so bad, they had that one trip up at Detroit. Whatever, I'll give them a break. One of their best games they played all year was at the Rams back in September, late September, early October, whenever it was. So they have confidence they could beat them in that last game on the Monday night, back and forth in the first half. Rams opened up in the second half. I know how talented the Rams are, but the Cardinals getting points. You saw what they did at Dallas a few weeks ago. I feel like they could hang here, you know?
Okay. I've got no confidence in Cliff Kingsbury, none whatsoever. And the other thing is it is a divisional game, right, K-Raj? So ultimately, this is what's keeping me off the spread. I think the Rams win this game. I don't know if they cover is the problem. Divisional game, why risk it?
Holden Kushner, you could find him on the Denver CityCast from VSIN, and he's taping another episode today, and his guest is going to be me.
Well, the most important one's going to be you.
Well, one of the guests, I guess.
Hold on, I got one last question for you, actually.
Go.
So, hey, I'm joining Kevin now with Vegas Insider. I know you guys did some radio together back in KC. What advice would you give to someone who's joining KR?
Just be nice. He's such a sweetheart.
You got no stories to tell?
He's such a sweetheart. I've never seen him ever. A story to tell. He got really upset at me one time. I remember you were doing updates. I don't remember what it was, but boy,
yes,
he just got furious with me.
Story.
And I felt so bad. To this day, I don't remember what it was, Kevin, but I do remember you just getting furious. And very rarely do I upset somebody and feel bad about it. I won't say to this day, but I felt very bad.
Hold on. I'll tell you what it was. I remember not the specifics, but I was doing update. Holden was a midday host on 610 Sports in Kansas City. I was doing updates during that show. Usually I do them like uninterrupted, and Holden came in, not in the studio, but he came in on the air and said something and interrupted me. And I'm like, what are you doing? And yes, I got very upset about that, but
I was a jackass.
We just buried the hatchet last week, so we're in good shape.
Oh, we did? I was a jackass back in my late 20s, early 30s, so I'll completely admit it. It was probably my fault. I don't feel bad about it anymore, and don't try and guilt me into it, K-Raj.
So that's it. So there's the advice. That's it.
Out,
be nice.
Yeah, just be nice to him. He's so nice. He's so nice.
Holden Kushner, we're going to let you go. Thank you so much. Denver CityCast on VSIN. And again, you can tell people where to find that. Yeah,
Denver CityCast, presented by BetRivers. You can find it just on my Twitter handle, @HoldenRadio. You were so nice to put it up there. Stephanie, a pleasure to meet you. Always great to be in your presence, Kevin. Thank you very much for having me on as a guest.
All right, there is Holden Kushner. We appreciate it, Holden. We'll talk to you soon.
Yes, we will.
All right, there is Holden Kushner. And true story, yeah. And I can't believe you remembered that, too, which was interesting.
You seemed to know exactly what he was talking about, too. You're like, I remember what upset me. I remember.
I do. And it was something so silly. It wasn't even anything that big of a deal. But I was at the time 22 or 23.
Oh, that's when you're like, I want to have a perfect show.
Yeah, it's like be professional. Like you're interrupting me, and for whatever reason. And then what's so funny is, I don't know if you know this about me. Years later, when I'm from Miami. I moved back to Miami. I worked with Dan Le Batard on their show. I did updates on there, and it was almost like a thing where they interrupted me, but I accepted it. But then it was okay. It was almost like funny at that point. Where
it's only Holden.
I was like, don't do anything. I have to talk now. And then it was like, it was some of our best highlights were them interrupting me. So that's why I was like, oh, that's fine. But I want to ask you about this because I know it's been a few days, but the national championship on Monday. With Georgia and Alabama. All right, number one, what do you think about that fumble that I thought it was an incomplete pass? I know it didn't matter in the grand scheme of things because Georgia ended up winning the game. But what did you think about that call with that Stetson Bennett fumble that they didn't reverse?
I'm with you. I agree. I saw that one too. But the way I looked at this game when it came to the bets, I looked at the way that these two games were set up. And it was Alabama came in hot in the SEC championship, but Georgia was more consistent in the season. So I took the under. I want to know what you took, if it was the Alabama or if it was Georgia, because I placed a Twitter poll to ask if people still think that betting against or betting on Saban is a thing, like never bet against Saban. On Twitter, it was about 50-50. On Instagram, I don't know what audience I have is different, but on Instagram, it was like 75% said, yes, it's not a thing anymore. So it's still, I think it is, but
I took Georgia, and I'll tell you why. Because after what happened in the SEC title game, and I'm going to really break down analytics for you right here, okay? So the SEC title game, Saban won, they dominated. Kirby Smart has had so many problems with Saban. I figured this was the last stand. This was it. Like, this was Georgia's best opportunity, and nobody could predict the receiver getting hurt on the A's. Nobody could predict that. But I thought this was Georgia's best opportunity. You're favored again. Neutral site game. You had to get this one. Georgia's not winning a championship for I don't know how many more years if they lose this one. This is so psychologically damaging if they ended up losing this game to Alabama again. And granted, look, it was a back-and-forth game in the fourth quarter. The final score was misleading. I mean, you had that pick six at the end. Georgia played great. Alabama's excellent. We can't take anything away from that. But I just liked Georgia. I just thought this was the time they had to grab this one. And it didn't look good in the fourth quarter, but then they broke away and it was fine. But yeah, so that was my analytical breakdown of it. This was totally psychological.
That's
Kirby
impressive, though.
This one.
Because I went to the Cotton Bowl and I saw I so badly wanted there to be an underdog because I've seen Ohio State beat Alabama in the Sugar Bowl with a third-string quarterback. Odds were against them. And from the start, I remember week 2, I told Bob Stoops with the Big New Kickoff crew, I was asking about the realignment and about Oklahoma and Texas going over to, at the SEC and what he thought about that and if he was in favor of a super conference. And he was like, yes, best play best. And I was like, well, let's make a case for Cincinnati. And he told me there's no way they could compete. And so when they got in, the only undefeated team, I wanted to prove them wrong. And I wasn't able to do that. I will say I took the under on that one too, but there was just no way that Cincy could have competed with the SEC. I would have liked to see Michigan and Cincy play in that game, but
also at Cincinnati, I had no problem with them being in the top 4 because I always believe this, Stephanie, that you are asked to win all of your games. Cincinnati won all of their games. I get they're in the American, they're not in the SEC, the Big Ten. Whatever.
And they won big, the eye test, yeah.
Yeah, they played well. They won at Notre Dame. Okay, they get a shot. I want to see what they could do. Mm-hmm. They hung. I mean, look, like the final score, like they didn't get it. They hung for a bit, but Alabama's obviously much better than them. Mm-hmm. We can't just keep having these same Alabama, Georgia, Clemson, Ohio State, like the same, like over and over and over again. Let's see what these other schools can do. And they got an opportunity. They lost. So be it. But then again, the counter argument is, well, Alabama played Notre Dame last year in the semifinal. They killed them. Alabama played a lot of teams in that semifinal, and they destroyed them. So why can't Cincinnati have an opportunity?
Right. And I look at the playoff and who else would have gotten in? You know what I mean? Like you were going to take out an undefeated team. I when I looked at how it was laid out, I was like, who else would have been number 4? They got it right. I just think that the way they set up the 1, 2, 3, 4 was, I wouldn't have put it that way.
But even look at Michigan. I mean, Michigan won the Big Ten and Georgia still blew them out. That Michigan is still really good and they're still below them.
But then again, I look at Michigan and beating Ohio State I think that mattered more to them than even a playoff game. Like they needed to beat Ohio State. Otherwise Harbaugh would be out, I think. But now he's maybe considering the NFL. Who knows? But you look at that. You look at what they've done over the past 5-6 years. I guess one game is all they really could pull. I did not think that they could win another big one. And Ohio State was a hurdle. What are the chances they go past that other hurdle? I do think in due time that they'll be able to compete in multiple games in a season, but they needed to get past that first hurdle. It wasn't just for one season. It was for like multiple seasons that they had to get past that hurdle.
Well, and also too, I think that, Harbaugh now, he's got a little more of a window where he's got more cushion now in Ann Arbor because he finally beat Ohio State. And then he wins the Big Ten title against Iowa, who, no disrespect to Iowa, anybody's beating you. Michigan's just better than them. So they didn't have the letdown. I thought getting to the Final Four didn't matter what happened with Harbaugh because now he beat Ohio State. He won the Big Ten. Okay, whatever. Yes. And you know what? You end up losing to the eventual national champion. So it was fine.
Yes. And I don't want to keep harping on SEC, but I mean, they are a different league, it seems, at least when it comes to this season. Usually Ohio State can compete. Clemson fell off the grid early. I tweeted earlier that I forget which week it was, but it was the Red River rivalry. It was the A&M beat down on Alabama. They took them down. It was all that happened in one day. And it was just like, what just happened to this season? The three teams that regularly make the playoff all had a loss before the halfway point of the season. Like, it was a very odd season, but I think that there was a lot of trickle down effect from the COVID year. Like, at least the Big Ten, for example, they had so many protocols in place. It affected them onto this season because they couldn't take hits. Like, tackling was an issue all season because of the restrictions at practice. So I think that there was a lingering effect of that. And you look at the more veteran players who earned their stripes, they earned their way onto the field. And then you see younger guys just coming in. I saw a couple of teams struggle with that where, the veteran who waited his turn is getting beat out by a rookie or a freshman, and it just creates a little bit of a divide. Plus the first year with NIL, there's so many changes with the transfer portal that I really do wonder what the future of college football is going to look like, because you have that realignment in a way, you have NIL, you got the transfer portal. There's so many changes that the locker room at least is just looking a lot different.
Well, the other thing, too, is you have these coaches like Brian Kelly and Lincoln Riley who are at major schools going to other major schools. So now Notre Dame, not saying they're going to drop off, but Notre Dame now has a young head coach. Oklahoma's got a new head coach. And now what USC could do, because they struggled for so long, if Lincoln Riley could bring that magic to the Trojans, that transfer portal, these coaches leaving, it's just everything is in flux. And then in the end, Alabama's still the national championship.
I know.
So it doesn't matter.
I know. but Georgia won. Nick Saban has officially lost to two former assistant coaches. Like, it took 24 games for that to happen. Then this season it happened twice, and in the big one. So we're making progress.
It's getting there. It's getting there.
Yeah.
Saban lost, and we don't want to root against Saban, but at least he lost the national championship. So that's never bad.
But it was just fun to see a different scheme here. Like, when they kind of trickled off, like they were always in the mix, but Georgia looked so dominant. It looked like, hey, if they win the SEC, then Alabama's out of the playoff. But this year was very different than most. So at least a lot of different fan bases had that in their favor.
Stephanie Otey, you could find her on Twitter at Steph Otey, and she's going to start joining us on the Daily Insider. I believe every Wednesday she's going to be with us. So we're looking forward to that. And Stephanie, thank you so much. Appreciate it. And guess we'll talk to you next week, right?
Yeah, thanks for having me. This was fun.
All right, there's Stephanie Otey. You can find her on Twitter at Steph Otey. Thanks, Steph.
Thanks. Have a good one.
All right, there is Stephanie Otey. And before we continue and look at the NBA DraftKings Championship Series, that GOAT, he's the proud owner of a crown. You see it. He wears it all the time. Score your seats to the Tournament of Champions. The DraftKings Championship Series is the ultimate competition of contest winners from daily fantasy sports, sportsbook, and casino. The one and only place you can compete in the king of competitions. The best of the best in each domain will compete for series supremacy in their own domain's Tournament of Champions. They'll have one goal in mind: win the ultimate crown and earn the title of the greatest of all time, the GOAT. And DraftKings now active in New York. So you can wear that crown. You'll see that GOAT walk around the streets of New York City now, because he can gamble there. You can gamble there. Check it out now at DraftKings.com. All right. Quickly want to run through some of the NBA for tonight. Let's take a look at the night ahead. And we begin Celtics-Pacers in Indiana. And the Celtics just beat the Pacers in overtime 2 nights ago in Boston. Marcus Smart out for the Celtics tonight. Indiana's actually been a good home dog recently, 4 straight covers at home, including a win over Utah last week. But Boston here, a short favorite against Indiana tonight. Philadelphia hosts Charlotte. 76ers laying 5.5 at home at BetMGM. Hornets have lost the last the 2 meetings to Philadelphia this year, both at home. But LaMelo Ball didn't play in either of those games. He was in the COVID protocol. So he hasn't played against them this year. Philadelphia's won 7 straight. They just beat Houston 2 nights ago. Charlotte off 2 really good wins over Milwaukee. So keep that in mind. Hornets playing a little bit better recently. Bradley Beal is in the COVID protocol for the Wizards. He missed last night's win over the Thunder. Washington 5-2 to the over this year without Bradley Beal in the lineup. So they play a little higher pace there. and they just came back and beat the Magic on Sunday. That was a low-scoring game. We'll see if it goes back and it trends over tonight. The Hawks back at home, and I got this number on Atlanta, which is pretty amazing, that the Hawks are 0-9 straight up against the spread, their last 9 as a favorite, and also they have lost 8 straight games at State Farm Arena. So they're back at home after they lost the final 2 games of their road trip against the Lakers and the Clippers. The Heat, meanwhile, they finish off their road trip. Kind of interesting. They played all out west, and now they're coming east for this one game before going home. But the Heat off a win over Phoenix over the weekend. Really good win over the Suns. Blew them out. Mavericks and the Knicks from Madison Square Garden. Luka Doncic, Kristaps Porzingis. They will be showcased tonight as Dallas 2.5-point favorite against New York. And the Mavericks off a win a few days ago against the Bulls. They played look, Dallas has had a very much an up-and-down season in Jason Kidd's first year running the show, but still 22-18, and Luka's been out. But Dallas right now, they've won 6 in a row. They beat Golden State at home, beat Chicago at home. Some of the teams on the road they've beaten, not great, at Houston, at Oklahoma City, at Sacramento, at Portland. But the Mavs, though, still playing very well recently. The Knicks off a win over the Spurs. They've won 3 or 4 New York, so we'll see if they keep that up. Speaking of the Spurs, back at home hosting Houston tonight, and the Rockets, they are coming off a rough stretch at the end of their homestand, losing to the Sixers. San Antonio with a pair of losses to New York and Brooklyn, and those 2 teams meeting up for the first time this season. The Cavaliers and the Jazz, that's a lot of respect for Cleveland, getting 5.5 against Utah tonight on the road. And I believe Rudy Gobert still sidelined. And Gobert is still out. Rudy Gay is out. Joe Ingles questionable. Cavs continuing their road trip. They've won 2 of the first 3. And Utah off a rough end of their road trip, dropping the final 3. The Toronto game, they had a lot of guys out, but Donovan Mitchell came back for the last 2. They blew that big lead at Detroit a few nights ago. So the Jazz not playing so well right now. Nets and the Bulls in Chicago at the United Center. It's a 10 o'clock tip-off on ESPN. And Chicago laying 2.5 there. They beat up the Pistons last night. That game, depending on what total you got, landed on 220. It opened at 220.5, 221, closed at 220, 219.5. So it went right on 220. But the Nets here are a short dog. Kyrie's questionable. Harden's questionable. So keep an eye on that later in the day. Lakers and the Kings, they wrap up the night from Sacramento. Lakers a 3.5-point favorite. Kings coming off a loss to the Cavs a few nights ago on Sunday night. And the Lakers, they're actually, look, they have been very much up and down just because it's what they do. 21-20 on the season for LA. 7-9 on the road. And the Lakers off that 8-point loss to Memphis. That snapped a 4-game winning streak for the Lakers. Final regular season meeting between those two. Lakers have taken 2 of the first 3 meetings with the Kings. Before we get out of here, BetMGM, they're the king of sports books. Bet $10 to win $200 if your team scores a touchdown. Bet on any NFL money line. And if your team scores a touchdown, you'll receive an additional $200 in free bets. Again, new players only, must be 21 years or older to play, and legal in the following states: Arizona, New Jersey, Colorado, Tennessee, West Virginia, Iowa, Virginia, Michigan, Pennsylvania, Washington, D.C. only. Full terms and conditions apply. That is BetMGM. They are the king of sports books. Mike, thanks to Stephanie Otey for joining us today. You can find her every Wednesday. So joining us on the Daily Insider. Also, Holden Kushner at Holden Radio on Twitter, and he hosts the VSIN Denver CityCast, and got a lot of good things to talk about there. A lot of things going on in Denver. Also, didn't mention this too. Nuggets blew a 25-point lead last night to the Clippers. How? But they ended up losing that game in LA at Staples Center. I am Kevin Rogers. Thanks a lot for tuning in. Tomorrow, Vince Akins will join us to talk about his trends for the weekend for the 6 NFL games. Again, I'm Kevin Rogers. Thanks a lot for watching. And as always, best of luck with your bets.